February 18th, live trading, San Diego. We got the Lowe's Coronado. I mean, what else would you want? This event is limited to 50 people. Look at your calendar, clear it, make sure you show up. If you want to be a rebel, this is the place to be. You got to sign up for it now. Giddy up, baby.
I still miss that clapper.
Where the hell is it?
Up in Chicago. I left it. I forgot it.
How the hell do you forget
You know,
that?
you're packing your stuff, and the last thing you think of is to pack the clapper.
Pack your stuff, sissy.
Welcome back to the Rebel's Edge, folks. He is Pete Najarian. I'm John Najarian. We've got Jared manning the controls. And Mark Lepresti again. Thank you, Mark, for hanging in there yesterday and offering his insights. Pete, was a good job. Also, thanks to our friend Bryn Talkington for coming on board for a preview of 2023. That was great. I think we're going to be publishing that, right, Jared? That's going to be out there for the world to see as well.
Yeah, if it's not already.
All right. So I'll put a link to that, folks, because we always appreciate Bryn. I know so many of you really loved hearing from her at the Dallas event this year, RebelCon, and we'll make sure we get her on frequently as possible because, yeah, great insight, Pete. She just was fabulous, very cool and collected. You can't shake that woman.
I got the Cliff's Notes from that when I jumped on late, John, because I got there late, but fantastic, and a lot of things that I agreed with for sure. Energy, she's still very, very much a bull about what's going on in the energy world, and that I couldn't agree more. So we'll see how that all pans out for 2023 as well.
Yeah, there was one thing, Pete, that I learned about energy yesterday as I was digging into it before that event with Bryn, and that was natural gas. When you have that natural gas pipeline, and of course, it is propelled basically through there like by a jet engine, the equivalent of that, Pete, pushing that through. But a lot of condensation or water vapor gets in there too, which is one of the real issues when you talk about pipelines freezing up and so forth. It doesn't matter how much electricity you've got. The pipelines get cool with that natural gas whipping through there, and you get condensation, and that can freeze up and cause not as much to go through those pipes. That was one of the things, like I say, I was listening to the CEO and president of EQT, Pete,
Yep.
the biggest natural gas player in the United States, even though they're based in Pittsburgh. And get this one too, Pete, I'll just throw it out to you. He said that natural gas in New England, because they don't have pipelines there, is $20 per British thermal unit, BTU, and it's only $5 in Appalachia where they're getting it from, but they have pipelines there. They don't have pipelines up to the north, and that's one of the big issues.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it, John. There's a lot of different reasons why when we see the price of nat gas like it is right now underneath $5 or somewhere close to $5, it's a lot different in other parts of the country. And Pat McAfee, of course, he understands nat gas better than any guy I know, John. On some of those, we may have to tell Pat, hey, man, we found out how you can actually fight through this natural gas. You got to get that thing cooled down a little bit before those game days kick off.
That is one funny man.
He's a funny dude. He's got that microphone like this, John. He's swinging it around. It's great.
Well, folks, we always start off with a macro minute, 1 minute of macro. And what I'm going to say today, Pete, is NASDAQ hit a 30-month low yesterday. And as we go into the second to last trading day of this year, probably decreased volumes tomorrow, the last trading day, I'm going to say it's not surprising to see a little bit of a fight back from the markets today.
Yeah, it makes total sense, John, and I would agree with you. I mean, what's really propelling the markets today is exactly what was pushing them to the downside yesterday, 350, 360 points. it was technology, consumer discretion, a lot of those various names. And you look at what's leading today. Yesterday, John, here's a macro thing for you. So yesterday, every single sector finished in the red. Today, every single sector's in the green. We have just flipped for the day, and we'll see how sustainable that is. We know what's been going on the month of December. We know that the Santa Claus rally, unfortunately, Santa Claus got a snowball to the face. But, as we kind of close out this year, it'll be interesting to see if we get a little bit more. Do we get one more day? That's the thing. Do we get one more day after this?
Well, it'll be interesting also. It's actually the 5 days after Christmas and the first 2 days of the new year. This year, we only have 4 days after Christmas because we didn't trade on Monday, the 26th, because, they arranged that to be a holiday. So the days after Christmas, we had 4. I'm not sure if that means, Pete, we had 3 to the first 3 days of next year. But if we see a rally during that time, the markets are up some 77% of the time for the year. But that will remain to be seen, especially with Goldman and everybody making dire predictions. Let's jump, Pete, to gaming stocks and gaming in Las Vegas in general. I know you've got some stats. I'll throw this one out there. Year over year, Las Vegas Strip revenue was down 11.3% in the month of November. 11%. Now, we all know that people go out to Vegas to enjoy themselves, and most of them to game. But wow, to see this slowing down this much into the holidays, something you don't see very often, Pete.
Yeah, it's interesting, John, but I think you and I both know this, and people should always keep in mind, where do they get the real revenue when you're concerned about some of the casinos themselves? When you're talking about Wynn, when you get Las Vegas Sands, and we all know it, it's in China. It's actually somewhere overseas in the East, at least. And that's really the huge driver. Las Vegas Sands, for instance. I mean, it's the percentage of the revenue that they get is overwhelmingly, if not all of it, somewhere over there. So because of that, it's interesting to see these numbers. It's also interesting, John, that I think we should all keep an eye on is what's going on from a health perspective right now in China. Because as we watch that, what's going to happen? Are they going to go backwards once again? Are they going to, take a look at this and say, hey, we can't do this. The zero tolerance was what we wanted to do and we were doing. Are they going to stick and go back to that, John? And that's a question that will really impact, again, Wynn, Las Vegas Sands, and many of those different casino companies.
Well, all you have to do, folks, is look at some charts, pull one up for like Caesars Entertainment. You want to, carve out Macau and so forth. Fine. CZR, take a look at that. Middle of December is $53. Now it's 41. So that's the reaction to that slowing volume. But again, it's buy rumors, sell news. So that works in reverse too. In other words, that was November. Maybe we're starting to see a recovery in December. All right, Pete, stock we've never spoken of before, but it's a multi-billion-dollar stock, TGTX. This one up 28%, but gave back nearly all of a huge rally yesterday and then came back today to be up 28%. What do you make of this one, TG Therapeutics, for getting a Food and Drug approval for one of their relapsing form of multiple sclerosis?
Yep, and a nearly 30% move, John, 28%, 38% move to the upside. I mean, when you look at this relapsing multiple sclerosis, and they've gotten approval. So that's where it really matters, right? I mean, you and I have talked about this anytime we've talked about therapeutic companies, any of these drug companies. It's all about, phase one, that's great, but that's really not that important. It's actually as you get further down the line and you get through phase 3, and now all of a sudden you get approval. That's what's happened here. This could be a huge boost for this company going forward. I don't know the numbers themselves on how much will they be able to make from this drug. I'm sure that will be something huge. How about the volume today, John? 3.5 million is what they average. They were over 22 million an hour ago. I mean, this is just incredible, the kind of volume that they've got right now. It was a $19 stock in January. You go back to December of 2020, it was a $50 stock. So today on this huge move, it's gotten back up over 10. So does there have some room to run? I would say it absolutely does have some room to run. I just need to know a little bit more about the numbers themselves on, okay, so what will they make from this drug? How big is this drug for them, and how's that going to feed into them? But there's a huge short interest there, John, and they're getting squeezed today.
Yep. And for all the folks with MS, this is administered twice a year, and it's an hour-long infusion. So this isn't just a shot or a finger prick like with diabetes, where you check yourself and then administer what you need as far as insulin. This is a much more complicated infusion of this product into your veins. But with some hope, Pete, that is why you're seeing 24 million shares. I just checked it, changing hands. All right. What about cal-maine Foods? This one is almost a head scratcher, Pete, because if I told you that they had record quarterly sales of eggs, it's the largest egg distributor in the United States. So they had record net sales, $801 million worth. That's up 110% with the same quarter last year. You might say something like, well, if they're doing numbers like that, stock must be up pretty good. Nope, down 12%. There's a reason, but down 12%. Do you agree with that, Pete?
Here's the only reason I would, John. So this stock, it's made an incredible run, okay? It was a $37 stock the beginning of the year. It ran all the way up to 64. Even at 53, where it is right now, think about that. When you look at a market that's been absolutely pummeled all year, it seems like we just barely ever sniffed anything green. But you look at that and you look at what this company's been able to accomplish. It's done a really, really great job. Now, on these record numbers, the one thing that's not at issue, at least, they missed on their earnings. They crushed it on the revenue, but they actually missed on the earnings. The earnings were $4.07. They were looking for like $4.24. So that miss was one of the issues. And part of the reason, John, I think they missed was feed costs also were something that these guys have to deal with, right? Because it's great that they're making another $1 more per dozen eggs, and they're the largest distributor that there is out there. But the problem is they've got some costs that they've got to deal with as well. Shipping all these eggs out, gasoline, diesel, all of that plays into this thing. And so I think there's a lot of other factors that we have to think about here. But I would say this, looking at the price of the stock right now, as far as a PE and all of the rest, where I continue to think the stock continues to go, I think would be to the upside. So it's actually kind of giving us, I think, an opportunity right now to say, you know what? Yes, those costs are there, but people are coming after it, and they might have a lot of ability to be able to hold that cost up there for the eggs as they sell.
Right. That's my point exactly, Pete. And quarterly gross profit was up almost 40%, 39.6%. So this was, I think, a phenomenal report. Analysts were a little overly optimistic, and probably the management should have pared back some of those estimates by, some conversations with those analysts. But this is the world we live in. You got to trade it like this. They did miss, just like Pete said. I think it presents an opportunity at these lower levels. How about TGX, Pete? We're in a lot of the T stocks today, and TGX, this one's up pretty good, but it's down as much as 79% year to date. Basically, they've got 1,700 patents in the life science sector. That means they've got an awful lot of levers they can pull, and all they need is a couple of those to make this one up. Maybe not get back that 79%, Pete, but maybe get back into the black by the middle or end of next year.
Yeah, maybe so, John. I mean, one of the problems is it was probably too much euphoria early on, and the stock was trading 154 bucks, hit lows of 24, and here we are now today, call it 36, 35, 36 bucks. But they do have a focus on a lot of really interesting technology that they're working on. And obviously, you just mentioned all of the various patents that they've got and so forth. There's a lot of interesting parts to this company that I think could actually propel this thing back to the upside in a big way. Will that happen? I'm not ready to say it is just yet, but I think that there's a lot of reasons why we'd want to keep an eye on this name. I can't wait to see if we get some options activity in this name ever, John. But TXG, so is it
TXG. I
TGTX?
misspoke. That
That's
was
okay.
my mistake.
Yeah, but
TXG.
TXG, and that's the symbol and all. But keep an eye on this one. I definitely will myself. I think there's a lot to this company, John. They've got a lot of potential that's sitting there. Now it's a matter of them actually getting things so that they can make something of that potential. They haven't been able to do it yet, at least not this year. But I think in the forward year, 2023, I think there's a great opportunity here.
Yep. And folks, one of the reasons we wanted to address this one also was they're going to be speaking at the JP Morgan Healthcare Conference. That goes on, and it'll be happening, I think, January 10th or something like that, Pete. So keep an eye on that. January 10th, I think, 2023. That's another reason to watch this one and see if they can make that big recovery that we were talking about there. All right. I'm going to throw one out, and thanks for catching that, Pete. It's TXG, just like you said. I'm going to throw GT out there, Pete. Goodyear. Why? Because they bought 10,000 at the money calls. So 3 months into the future, January, February, March 10 calls, they bought 10,000. That is a million share equivalent, folks. If you've watched this stock at all, you know that it's not been a great year for GT. There are times when people are buying tons of cars, whether they're new or used. People tend to put new tires on a used car and so forth. The more new cars you make, the more tires you have to have. Can't roll it out without tires. But this one's down from 24 to 10, Pete. It was this far from a new 52-week low yesterday. What do you think here?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, John, I think it's really interesting because of the fact of what's going on in the car industry right now. This whole transition, as I will tell you this, there's my prediction, and you and I both have the same friend that we deal with when we talk about this, but used car market, that value is going to start dropping, I think, in a real hurry. And that's what I'm getting from a lot of different of the dealers that are out there that say, hey, look, this can't stay up there where it is right now, where you've got used cars going for the same price as the new cars. That seems a little bit ridiculous on the lot. So we'll see a bit of a transition there. And then I think we're going to start seeing I just feel like the people wanting to drive will be driving more, which means there's going to be a need for more folks changing tires out. I think GT is a really interesting one here, John. I really do. I like it a lot. Now, I'm going to jump onto Apple, though, real quick. So Now this is an interesting one, John, because we're looking at Apple. It got the crap kicked out of it yesterday, right? I mean, you look across the board, and we've watched a lot of these technology names that have gotten slammed. But there's been sort of a range, it seems like, especially in the case of Apple. And today, although this is not a long the commitment here, they bought the December 30th. For those that are not paying attention, today's the 29th. These expire tomorrow. So the 130 calls going from 65 cents up to about $1.25. We'll just call it $1. Stock was trading at around 129 at the time. It was a little lower, got a little bit higher. So around 129, they're paying $1 for these. There was 71,100 of these bought, John. That's a monster trade. And it's just incredible some of the size trades that we have seen of late in a lot of these various stocks. Some of them look like hedges. Some of them definitely look like a directional trade. This one looked like a directional trade to me. And by the way, before we came on here, I took a quick look. Tesla, 2.1 million contracts trading on the day. Apple, just under 1 million contracts trading on the day. Gives you a little bit of an idea of just how crazy things are and have been for Tesla. Apple, this is just a standard day, but this is not a standard trade. 71,000. That's a monster buy, looking for not even a whole lot of upside. Stock's already at 130 right now. So you're just looking to see, hey, can this continue today and maybe into tomorrow?
Yeah, well, I think it was, and Mark and I talked about it yesterday, Pete. It's one of my number one tax loss harvesting candidates. And you guys know, I'm just saying it again, if you sell a stock at a lower price than where you bought it, you can recognize that loss on your 2023, the April 2023, when you file for your 2022 taxes. However, you can't get back in for 30 days. That's known as the wash sale rule. So if you're somebody who has bailed on Apple here, Pete, in the last few days down at 125, and you're watching it back at 130, you're hoping against hope that it ain't 140 or 145 by the end of January, because that's when you can buy it again. You have to wait 30 days. If you don't, well, then you don't get the tax loss. You just have a loss, but you can't match it up against your gains. So that's a little something to think about. All right, Pete, what do you got as far as sports and bowl games?
Well, this is are there too many bowl games part 2, John? We've already done this once before, and I was talking about a game that I did Christmas Eve 2014, the Popeyes Bahama Bowl. It was the very first year of the Bahama Bowl.
Might have been the last one too.
Well, yeah, Popeyes is no longer but they still play the game. They just played it just about 2 weeks ago, as a matter of fact. But that game, John, is why there are not too many bowl games out there. Despite the fact that there's 43 bowl games played this year, there aren't too many because that game was unbelievable. At one point in time, Central Michigan was up 28-14 in the fourth quarter. And actually they trailed, They were trailing 28-14 in the fourth quarter, 49-14. They scored 4 touchdowns to make the game 49-42, had the ball on the last play of the game. They throw a Hail Mary. It gets caught. Multiple laterals later, they bring the ball in for a touchdown. Unbelievable. And they go for the 2-point conversion. The score is 49-48, and they miss it. Now, fast forward to today, or at least last night, Arkansas, Kansas in the Liberty Bowl. Now, I know that you were telling me earlier, you said, well, we were picking which bowl was the better game. That's never easy to figure out, but this one turned out to be the game. I went to bed and watched this game, and I could not fall asleep, John. It was unbelievable, and it was a late game. Going into the third quarter, Arkansas is beating Kansas 38-13. That's a 25-point lead. Then Kansas scores 25 unanswered points to tie it up 38-38. They go into overtime. Kansas scores, it's 45-38. Arkansas goes back, it's 45 apiece. Arkansas scores 53-45. Comes back by Kansas, 53-53. Arkansas goes now you go to a 2-point conversion. So they go for the 2-point conversion, which they have to. They go for it, they make it. They're up 55-53. Kansas tries, they miss it. But that game was unreal. And if we didn't have all these crazy bowl games every night of the week in December into January, we wouldn't have games like this. I love the fact that we have games like this out there. By the way, keep an eye. Syracuse and my Golden Gophers are going to be playing today in 1 hour, actually 45 minutes from now, John. That's going to be a fun game as well because 2 teams that started strong and didn't finish all that great are going at it in the Pinstripe Bowl in New York. And just yesterday, both teams and their captains were ringing the bells down at our place, the New York Stock Exchange, having a great time. These guys love their experience. What do you think about the bowl game thing, though? Going back to it once again, you get 40 some odd games, you're going to get some great games, right?
Well, yeah, yes, you are, Pete. And Mark and I, we were wrong. We thought North Carolina playing against Oregon, those 2 teams seemed like with the quarterbacks and so forth and the sort of offense that Oregon is capable of, that would have been the better game. And we were wrong. Like you say, Kansas versus Arkansas was the game. I think giving kids an extra game to play and something to play for, even if they happen to be at a 6-7 sort of season or whatever, 6-6, to let them play in a bowl game, get that experience, I think is a great thing. So are there too many? Yeah, there really are. But as long as they can get some ratings, people will continue to put on games, including new ones like that relatively new Bahamas Bowl, which had what was this year, Pete? I think it had Miami, the Miami Redhawks from Ohio, that Miami versus, God, I can't even remember. I think it was somebody, the Blazers or something like
University
that.
University of Alabama, Birmingham, the Blazers, yeah.
All right, there you go, the Blazers. Well, so I had it on for about as long as it takes to warm up a cup of coffee, Pete. I must say I wasn't glued to the screen.
Not all those games are going to be great, but every once in a while we get lucky and we get some great games, and it makes it a lot of fun, and it's worth having to go through some of the games. And by the way, I look forward to the Market Rebellion Bowl when that comes out. I'm not sure what year that is, but looking forward to that one, John. That should be a lot of fun. All right, so the second one is this. Derek Carr. Now, here's a guy who is 31-year-old quarterback for the Las Vegas Raiders, right? And believe it or not, they've determined, you know what? We think we ought to bench this guy. And you and I were talking beforehand. We know why they benched the guy. First of all, his performance levels maybe haven't been perfect. I'll give you that. Not perfect. But what if I told you this, John? So I look at Derek Carr and I'm like, I looked up his stats and I'm like, well, he's got 14 interceptions. That's not good. Well, Josh Allen's got 13. He seems to be pretty good. Dak Prescott's got 12. I think he's a bit of a choker, but a lot of people think he's great. So he's got that. Joe Burrow's sitting there at 12 as well. So his 14 interceptions don't bother me as much when I look at that. So what is the real difference between these teams? I'll tell you what it is. This coach is a moron. He hasn't figured out how defense is the problem with the Raiders, okay? Here's why. What if I told you this? You're going to bench the quarterback because you've got the number 30 defense in sacks. You've got a total of 25 this year. Pretty pathetic. You're only 2 away from being the worst in the NFL. 30 in interceptions. They've got a total of 5 this year. 5 interceptions. There's guys out there getting 2 and 3 interceptions in a game, for God's sakes. They got 5 as a team on the defensive side. They're number 25 with yards against at 360, number 24 with points against 23. And let me tell you this. If Derek Carr is going to be on the market, I'll tell you who would want him. Atlanta, San Francisco. I know San Francisco, how they're positioned right now, but Derek Carr might be the right answer in some sort of a trade or something. New Orleans, Arizona, Tennessee, Washington, Denver, Indianapolis. I think every single one of those teams would kill to have Derek Carr on their team as their quarterback, John. So it's amazing to me how these guys think, how they do their analysis and everything else. But this is the same head coach who went to Denver for about a year before he got fired there, went back to New England, and now he's getting it another shot again, and his success rate is not looking all that great. I don't understand why these guys are benching him other than the contract. But even that, there's still actually an outside shot for the Las Vegas Raiders to be in the playoffs.
Right. Well, Pete, I would say that Davante Adams, who they acquired from Green Bay, and had Green Bay been able to keep him, but unfortunately, you've already talked about it ad nauseum, Pete. The quarterback took all the money, really, in Green Bay. There wasn't enough left for Davante, so they traded him to the Raiders to team him back up with Carr, his college teammate at Fresno, right, Pete?
Yep.
Okay, so now you've just broken up that, which you wanted to get them both back together because they had such a great relationship, and they still do have a great relationship, but maybe it's this coach that's the problem and not Derek Carr. So I tend to agree with you. Don't just tend to agree. I'd flat out agree that this is a horrible move. Now they have degraded the value of Carr to the point, Pete, where I bet they have to subsidize the trade. In other words, I bet somebody doesn't just say, yeah, we'll take him and we'll give you this. I bet they'll have to eat some of that contract in order to trade him. That's not going to surprise me one bit. And again, that falls on the general manager, the GM, as well as the head coach for doing such a horrible job of showcasing Carr. You should have known this weeks ago if you were going to trade this guy or get rid of him. But, here they are just limping along, and now they're about to get crushed by Kansas City against a quarterback that has maybe had 13 throws this year.
Yeah, it is amazing, John, how you see these things and how the ownership doesn't see what the rest of us all see, right? I mean, it's just amazing. And I just keep going back. Where's the defense? I mean, if you look at the teams that are actually doing really well this year, who would be your top teams right now for the Super Bowl on the AFC, John, if you had two? Probably be Buffalo, right? I mean, I would say it's probably that, and maybe Kansas City. They play a little bit of defense, particularly at Buffalo. You go on the other side, well, the 49ers, now everybody's in love with them. You and I have been talking about them since August when we went to camp with the Vikings and went, holy crap, that defense is good. I mean, it doesn't matter what the offense has. And now that they got McCaffrey, that turns into a pretty interesting offense as well, no matter who's at quarterback.
Well, Pete, I'll end it with this, that this guy Sidham, you know, who was a 4th round pick in 2019. So it's been 3 years. The guy this is his first career start for Vegas. And I just checked it. He's 8 for 13. And I'm not putting him down. I don't mean to do that, but I'm saying, you know, you're a fan. You've paid hundreds of dollars to go see a game, and this is what you're going to get because they sit their quarterback because they don't want him to get hurt. I mean, you know, that's pretty pathetic. It just kind of shows you where the Raiders are in the pecking order of the NFL right now. It wouldn't have been this way under Al Davis, Pete, but sadly it's this way under his son.
Stidham is an interesting cat, John. He's a quarterback from that very powerful quarterback school of Auburn. So actually, I'm really excited about watching that game.
Well, thanks for joining us, folks. We will be back next week. But as you know, since we trade tomorrow on Friday, the 30th, we get Monday off. So we won't be back Monday. We'll be back Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday next week. All 3 days for the Rebels Edge. The first 3 days, which will determine, according to the Trader's Almanac, how the year goes. Be sure to join us next week. Have a great afternoon, everybody.